speak because I think after 18 hours, we should take a second and thank Vin and the fabulous staff, Mary Rowe, Paul Kelterborn, and Jessica Howland, and the entire staff of MAS for producing this phenomenal summit.
Thanks, Jeannie. Thank you,
you.
Jeannie.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Ron, this is an honor. You're a Jane Jacobs recipient.
I am.
It's very exciting,
Great.
and one of the reasons, among many, is that you've been such an enormous advocate for better public space in the city of New York. You've been an advocate for many other things, which we'll talk about in a second, but I think we want to talk about your book, Beyond Zuccotti Park, which is absolutely stunning, and we want to talk about how you came to write this book. Let's go back to...
All right. First of all, it's not my book. It's
yes,
a collective effort of a lot of people. It came out of walking down one of the streets of the city of New York and bumping into another friend of mine, Lance Brown, right about a year ago, actually, and realizing that in the greatest city, in the greatest democracy, there isn't space but where we can assemble, where we can learn from each other, and where we can protest. And that when we lack that kind of public space, that our democracy may be threatened. So we decided that if we needed to find out how and where we can create these kinds of spaces. And what we did is we talked for a while and then said, well, maybe we should go down to the Center for Architecture, which was a few blocks away from where we met, and said, let's talk to Rick Bell and see whether or not we can't convene a conference on the role of public space in a democracy. And we went and we found Rick, and he immediately agreed to it. And it was sort of a very suitable space because right across the street is a statue of LaGuardia, Mayor LaGuardia. And Mayor LaGuardia really believed in the role of public space. He believed in protecting protesters, and he believed in free speech. And I think that's what sort of propelled the discussion. We held it on November 17th. It was a Sunday afternoon, and about 130, 140 people showed up, and it was live streamed the same way this is. And I got a call from an editor out in the West Coast from New Village Press, which is the publication arm of architects, designers, and planners for social responsibility, and said, would you turn it into a book? We had a subsequent meeting. We invited a number of authors from a diverse set of backgrounds, and so we wound up with 40 people contributing to what was, I think, really a very exciting kaleidoscope of issues that surround the importance of public space, and particularly public space that deals with issues of equity as well as diversity, that deals with the role of public space in a democracy. And that's what the book's about. And
it is a wonderful kaleidoscope, as you said, of very important people expressing their opinions about this and how we should be going forward to get, as Jason said a few minutes ago, getting designers out of their silos and onto the street to work on the public realm. And that's the key element here. Now, you told us how this happened a year ago, but this is much longer in the making in terms of your life and your thinking about these kinds of issues. Would you just take us back to how you became an architect and how you became an activist and how you, just what was the path that took you to this? And where did you grow up and all of those things?
Well, if I did, it would take us more time than we have.
Oh,
so let me start with at least when I was in architectural school and going to graduate school for city planning. And it was 1963, the period of the mid-60s. We had a president of the United States who was by the name of John F. Kennedy, who gave us a lot of hope and a sense that we could change the world. He began to talk about how we launch a war against poverty and deal with the injustices and inequities that existed in our society. And here we were, a group of architects and planners, not only at Pratt, but at Howard University, at Columbia University, and other places. And all of a sudden, we were challenged. And the challenge was, what should our role as professionals be in addressing these problems? And unfortunately, a couple of months later, Kennedy is assassinated, and we're really in this sort of turmoil. But we decided to deal with that legacy by committing ourselves in various different ways. And what we decided, a number of us who were working on this, was that poor people, people who live in low-income areas of the city, have been traditionally disenfranchised. Whenever there were programs to renew their areas, whenever there were decisions being made about the public realm, they were excluded. And we began to say, how do we bring our resources to help them come to the table so they had a true voice in what was going to affect them? And that was more than just participation, because that can be just consultation, it could be sort of window dressing. It was really, how do you substantively involve people in the decisions that will eventually affect their lives? And that meant, to a great degree, building their capacity to understand the different alternatives so they could choose among alternatives, to begin to understand how people in other places were addressing comparable problems. And so out of that grew the whole idea around advocacy and pluralism in planning, something that Paul Davidoff and Linda Davidoff wrote about, and something that we were doing because we were asked by a group of ministers in Bedford-Stuyvesant to see if we couldn't help them rebuild and improve the quality of their neighborhoods. And by the way, it was started and funded in part by Rockefeller money. The Rockefeller Brothers Fund gave us those resources. And in working with them, first they wanted to know what was a white institution, what were the ministers who had asked us to come into the community doing, and they were very fearful of government actions that were being planned for those areas. And it was confrontational. And out of that confrontation, I think I made some of my best friends in life. One of my greatest mentors, Elsie Richardson, who unfortunately died about 4 months ago, or a little bit more than that. Elsie really taught me what community meant. And she was a leader in Bedford-Stuyvesant. And they really wanted to see their community rebuild. And it was a community. They taught me very quickly that they didn't live in a ghetto. They taught me what it was to think about planning, not only in addressing the problems, but really in exploiting the assets within the community. And so working with Elsie, working with the committees in Bedford-Stuyvesant and a number of others, they came up with a plan that basically addressed how they would renew their neighborhood. It wasn't a silo plan. It dealt with it from a comprehensive and integrative way. They looked at how would they deal with education and housing and healthcare and political power, all within one sort of comprehensive view. We helped them write up that plan. The plan was vetted through hundreds of meetings, from living rooms to church basements to public school auditoriums, and we presented it to the city. And the community lacked the political power to get the city to respond. We continued doing that, and then one time, one of the planning commissioners at the City Planning Commission, Ellie Guggenheim, said, you know, maybe some of the staff at Robert Kennedy's office would be interested. He's beginning to think about running for the U.S. Senate from New York. So we agreed, and the we in this case was the community working with me. I must say some of it was contentious because they didn't want another political leader walking through the community and not delivering. But we did eventually agree to that meeting. He came through the community, he was challenged. We worked with him and the community group for about a year. Again, another real great education experience. He flew in experts and people from around the country, all of whom learned from the experts in the community what was really what that asset base was. And out of it came an idea that if government wouldn't do it, let's create an entity, a community development corporation, that would undertake the redevelopment and partner with government and partner with the private sector, but be controlled by the community. And that led to the first community development corporation in the country. And from that time on, I've never sought a client. Community groups have come to us either in reaction to something that the city or the private sector wants to do, or in a way to address an initiative that they want to take place. And it's always been, I've been a lucky guy. I have worked with some of the best people, both on my staff, with my students, but mostly, and I think solely, with the people in the communities that we work with. And I see the Jane Jacobs Award really being shared with them. They are, in essence, the motivators of the rebuilding of New York. What we see often is government taking credit. We see a lot of other people taking credit, but it was you see a unified Lower Manhattan, you know, it's because of Jane's work. And it's because of people like Fran Golden on the eastern side of Canal Street, who really fought for what they believed in. And I think what you see in New York City and its regeneration is the peoples of New York City that fought to hold those institutions, to hold the communities intact, and to hold the institutions accountable, that really created the basis by which we have now been able to regenerate. And I'm often disturbed by the fact that city government will ignore those who really created the foundation. The people who really did the development for years, whether it's you know, St. Nicholas Alliance out in Williamsburg, East Williamsburg, that really created the plan, that kept the neighborhood intact, that led to its revitalization, that built hundreds of buildings and manages maybe $80 million worth of property in that area today, is ignored today, and the only developers who come in are private developers who now come in because the risk-oblivious developers of the community are now being ignored. And in that particular case, and I had a discussion with them the other day, the developer who was selected to undertake the development of a plan that they had developed has just been dropped by the city of New York because, you know, they had criminal activity and are now being indicted. So I think we really need to have a level playing field again, so we can recognize what are really the important contributions of community-based groups. And to some extent, I see that award coming to me really being because of the efforts of the groups that we had the unique opportunity of working with.
Well, Ron, you're the easiest person in the world to interview because
I never shut up.
And what we're seeing, no, not at all. What we're seeing is the passion of a man who has dedicated his life to this aspect of planning, advocacy planning. It's absolutely stunning what you've done. I don't know if people in the audience realize that the Pratt Center for Community Development, your work on the City Planning Commission, your work with these groups, you're a national figure in promoting how to do this right. And the most exciting part of that is you've been able to blend your knowledge and wisdom with these activities, with your teaching, and with political action. And I'm seeing that we're running out of time because otherwise I would ask you to tell us a little bit about your secrets about political action. But I'm told I can ask that. I can ask that, right? Because I think that's pretty critical. Give us a couple of, just two examples of how you were able to take an idea and to turn it into, you and the people you worked with, and turn it into a decision at the political level that made something happen. I'm thinking of some of the things on the Planning Commission when you were on the Planning Commission, but you choose something that you feel was really important.
Quite often things move from confrontation and really knowing how you use power to accomplish your goals. And if you're a powerless community, you can't pick up the telephone and call the decision makers. So sometimes you need to disrupt. But you need to know when you use disruption, when you use cooperation, when you use some sort of modeling of what you want to achieve. I remember we were working with the borough president of the Bronx on a project with MAS, by the way, and with Richard Kahn, who was one of the speakers before when he ran the Urban Assembly. And we were looking at how to renew the Bronx Center. And at one of those meetings, we were involved primarily to do a lot of the community participation. And we set up a lot of meetings, not centralized, but within the bed, within the heart of various different sub-communities and sub-neighborhoods that made up the South Bronx. And at one of those meetings, a group of people disrupted that meeting. And they didn't know, they felt powerless, and they disrupted the meeting. Two of us, Peter Stand, who I think is somewhere in the audience, I saw him earlier, and I decided we would go meet with that group. I was then on the City Planning Commission. Right. The two of us were both David Dinkins appointees. And when we went to that meeting, the community presented their arguments. They had kept the community alive. They fought the fires. They cleaned the vacant lots. They collected the garbage. They kept the community intact. And nobody talked to them about the plan that was being imposed on that particular area of Melrose. And so during the course of the conversation, I basically said that I think you have some legitimate arguments, and I think, you know, we will try to do something about it. Unbeknownst to me, they had put a reporter in that room, and the next morning, there was a headline in El Diario that city planning commissioner says the plan that the city does is wrong. And I got a call from both the borough president's office and from the mayor's office. What the hell are you doing? And I told them the truth, and to the, you know, what I felt and what the arguments were that Yolanda Garcia had given to us, and I repeated those arguments. And to the credit of the mayor, he said, I'll give you 6 months to work with the community to come up with a plan. Those 6 months, and he dedicated the staff, and you were up there with us from time.
You did it, you changed it.
Within those
Totally
6
changed the
months,
course
the
of the plan.
community came up with a plan. At first, the staff of city planning was very upset because they had put their heart and soul in putting together a plan.
Upset is mildly putting it.
It was a decent plan. In the end, they came and thanked us because by working with the community, a lot of the ideas that they had proposed as staff members and were disregarded by the bureaucracy were embraced by the community. And the plan that came out is significantly better than the one that was before. And I invite anybody, the same way someone earlier said they would walk you through Brownsville, I would invite anybody to walk through Melrose Commons today. Because what you're going to see in Melrose is really some of the first LEED certified buildings. You'll see some buildings with windmills. You'll see 6-story buildings that now have commercial on the lower floor at a period of time when the chair was saying, we don't have that building product. We can't do mixed-use buildings. And, you know, that's an excuse that you don't have the program. You develop the program. And so that was a place where the political action by the community, working with volunteers like Peter Stand and myself and a number of others that were involved, really led to a plan that has really rebuilt the community in very substantive and real ways. It's qualitative development. It's, you know, development is not only growth. It's how do you improve the quality of where we live and the quality of life for people.
Well, you've heard it from the mouth. He made it happen. Thank you very much. This is just wonderful.